Alrighty, folks. Looks like we are live. This is George. I am founder of Solo, and this is the Debt Hotline. On today's show, we have Greg Anjewierden. Very glad to have you on the show today, Greg. Just a
Yeah,
little bit
great to
about
be here.
Greg. Fantastic. Greg is a licensed and practicing attorney who used to work as a debt collection lawyer, collecting unpaid medical debt. As such, Greg knows all the inner workings of the debt collection litigation system and how it can be unfair for people who can't afford a lawyer. Greg is also the founder and CEO of Debt Brief, a company that helps people who are sued for debt with consulting, legal representation, forms, courses, and other resources. Greg, welcome on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Alrighty, folks. So we have a lot of people who are watching today. If you guys have any questions, call in. You can call into the debt hotline at 801 613 8181. That number's right there on the bottom of our screen. So if you have a question, if you are dealing with debt of any sort, just go ahead and call into the hotline and we'll make sure that we get your question answered. You can also put a uh, yeah, so that's the main way you can call in is just on that hotline. We also have some questions from people who have written in previously that we're going to be answering as well. And we have some people who have called in and left us a message on our voicemail. So before we get into those particular questions, general question and topic for today is how do you respond to a debt collection letter? Greg, can you go ahead and just give us the breakdown on how to respond to a debt collection letter?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things that I think are important to note when you get a debt collection letter. And the first is you're not legally obligated to give any response to a debt collector until you are sued. Like you get a summons and a complaint, and then you have to file an answer. Um, so I think one thing is people think, well, I have to respond because I've got this letter. You don't have to necessarily respond to a debt collection letter. Now there are reasons why you might want to, and it might be a good idea. And usually the one thing that you're going to do first is send like a debt verification or a debt validation letter and say, hey, I need you to send me the information that verifies that this debt is actually mine. And I think that's usually a good first step to determining, do they have enough information to prove that you owe this debt. I think the thing that you want to be careful of, obviously, is at this stage admitting that you owe the debt. Even if you know it's yours, it's probably not a good time yet to admit that you owe this debt to them. So those are kind of the key things that I say is you're not legally obligated to respond to a debt collection letter. Probably a good response is usually going to be a debt verification or debt validation letter. And the most important thing is at this point, you don't want to admit that you owe the debt.
Fantastic. Thanks for giving us that breakdown. So, folks, we have a question here from Raquel in Georgia. Going to go ahead and cue that up here. Okay, let's try that again here. Let's see if we can get the audio playing in. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So, playing the clip again.
Hi, I owe $11,400. With interest is $13,400. And I have been subpoenaed to come to court, but we haven't went to court yet. I'm trying to figure out how I need to handle that and what's the best way so I can get the least amount of settlement money. If I can come in there, I want to settle before we go to court. What's the best way to go about that? The reason I fell behind on payments was I had a leg injury and I was unable to work for a year. I also had a death in the family and I got a cut paid. So the interest rates were just going crazy because of the COVID and all that extra stuff, and it just became too much. So that's why.
All right, Raquel, thanks for giving us that context on your debt lawsuit situation. Greg, what's your take here?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to, she gave some context on the situation. I would say like there's no shame in getting into this situation, especially when you have like a medical issue like that. I mean, George, I'm sure that you meet a lot of people like I do that just like they feel really embarrassed about the situation, but like it happens, and we know that like we there's a lot of people that end up in this situation. So, first thing I would say is like don't like feel shame over this. But the second thing that I would say is, you know, I think definitely it was a little unclear in the question is this like a small claims thing that doesn't need an answer or not? But find out first, are you required to file an answer? And I typically tell people that you want to file an answer to the summons and the complaint before you start negotiating. In my experience, if you file that answer, the other side knows they're not going to get a default judgment against you. And it just gives you the tiniest bit of leverage in your settlement negotiations. Otherwise, if you don't file the answer first using a tool like Solo Suit, if you don't file that first, they might think, well, let's just sit on this and wait and see if we can get a default judgment against them. So get that answer filed. Once you do that, I think you want to reach out and you can try and negotiate it. Obviously, Solo Settle is going to be a really good tool if you don't feel confident in your abilities to negotiate that settlement yourself. I highly recommend it. And I think the other thing you want to remember is, start low in your negotiations because they're probably not going to take your first offer. Right. So don't stress over, okay, well, I owe them 13,000. Is 2,000 too low or is 1,000 too low? Like it almost doesn't matter because they're almost certainly not going to take your first offer. And you're going to realize pretty quick how far down they're willing to come. Now, I think for a lot of people, they get that first response back and they're like, well, I'm never going to be able to pay the amount that they're willing to take. And what I say to that is there's lots of cases that are difficult to settle at the beginning. But if you're continually working them and trying to reach a settlement, they have a way of working themselves out in the end. So I've helped so many people where they want to settle it right away. So you file the answer, you reach out to negotiate a settlement, the numbers just don't work for you. So keep defending that lawsuit. And you never know 3, 4, 5 weeks, even 3, 4, 5 months down the road, if you're continuing to work that lawsuit, like they may come down, things might work themselves out. In that case, maybe you end up in a different financial position. I think time is your friend. So keep working the case until you get a deal done and don't panic if the deal doesn't get done right away.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. And I think, for somebody who is being sued for a debt, certainly in my mind, yeah, first step is just respond to the lawsuit. The way I honestly think about it is that the complaint and answer couple are really just like a handshake. It's just like a handshake in like the legal space. Like for some corporations, and especially like in like the legal litigation space, uh, like the complaint can honestly just be like like the initial handshake from a corporation. And if somebody sticks out their hand to give you a handshake, you just stick yours right back out, and that's like filing the response to the complaint. You don't run away from them. You don't hide from the person who's sticking out their hand. You just shake it right back, and you say, "What's up?"
Yeah, I really like that analogy. I think the other thing that's important is don't just go in and admit everything that they're alleging. You know,
Yeah,
you can respond to the complaint and say like, "Look, I don't have enough information yet to admit or deny," and that's just fine, and that will keep the lawsuit process going. Whereas if you just go in and admit all this stuff, I mean, they've won. So,
right,
and
right,
that's a perfectly fine. That like lawyers do that in lawsuits every day. They just deny for not enough information. So
yeah,
there's no
absolutely.
problem doing that.
Right. Well, I think a lot of people, consumers especially, misunderstand and think that there needs to be some kind of like a communication before the lawsuit, which there really doesn't need to be, right? Like corporations, especially when it's like corporation to corporation, they can just start with the lawsuit. That can be like the first communication. You just get sued.
When I was doing debt collections, I actually took that approach because sometimes people want to be like, well, let's send them a collection letter and then let's send them to collections. And I was like, man, you really want to get them to pay quickly? Like, just file the lawsuit with no notice.
Right. Right.
So like they don't have to. You're right. They don't have to communicate at all
Right.
before lawsuits filed.
Yep, and that's the way a lot of debt collection law firms think about this, right? When if you're getting sued for the debt, that means you probably have a collector who's placed the account with a debt collection law firm. And the debt collection law firm will usually see their job as being to sue people and win the lawsuit, right? That's like their job. Their job isn't to have a nice conversation on the phone. Their job is just to file a lawsuit and to try to collect. And so, with solo folks, right, you can use solo to connect with the collectors. We focus on having good relationships with collectors as well as consumers. And we really think people want the same thing, which is an ideal settlement as fast as possible in most situations. So that's what we are doing. So folks, if you have a question, we have a lot of people here listening in. If you have a question, call 801-613-8181. We will pick up and we will jump you to the head of the queue to get your question answered. We have a question live from Monica. Let me go ahead and queue this up and we'll play this one. Here is Monica.
Not hearing it.
Let's see here.
Repo. Hi, this is Monica Jones, and I have card debt and a repo of a vehicle on my report, and I was just wondering if y'all could assist me with that and how much my monthly payments would be in order to wipe that off of my credit and report and to get my credit score back up.
All right, there we go. So Monica sounds like she is in a repossession of her vehicle. She's wondering how she can get out of that situation and get her credit score back up. Greg, what do you think?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I know you have like a lot of guests on your debt hotline here. I'm not the credit repair
Sure.
expert like some of the people you have on.
Yeah. No, I'm
But
happy to take the credit part. Well, what about the repo? How does she deal with like the repo and if that's like a result of a lawsuit?
yeah, so as far as the repo goes, if they come repo the car, I think the thing to remember is that yeah, they can come take the car, but the value of the car gets credited to the amount that you owe. So as far as when you're fighting the lawsuit, now the lawsuit might not be so much over whether you owe the money, but the fight in the lawsuit might be more over how much you owe. Right now, what the loan company is going to want to do is value that car really low, right? So if you owe, let's say you owe $10,000 and they repo the car and they're going to say, hey, this car was worth $3,000, so you still owe us seven. What part of what you want to do in that lawsuit is actually argue that the value of the car was more so that ultimately you owe less, right? And the judge can, or the can make that determination as part of the lawsuit. So you can come into the trial and show your evidence that like, hey, I did some research, I looked at Blue Book, I looked at comparables, here's the local classifieds that show the same type of car with similar type of miles where the car was worth $6,000. And you present that evidence, and the judge can ultimately determine, like, hey, yeah, it looks like the value of the car probably was $6,000, so you only owe 4 as opposed to 7. So I think when you're dealing with repos, that's going to be a really good strategy. Is not as much fighting do you owe, although you can still do that, but like one of the approaches you really want to take is that value of the car was actually really high, and that needs to be credited to your account.
Right. Fantastic. Yeah, and folks, right, so Monica, right, you're in this repossession situation. We feel for you. It would be ideal if you could keep your car for sure, probably, or you need some kind of vehicle probably to get to work. So we'd like you to be able to figure that out. And I think in this position, basically, you want to first like resolve this lawsuit that you're in, or this collection situation that you're in, get that thing resolved, and then next, moving on from there, you want to like settle any other debts that you're in. Like, what kind of debts do you have, right? Do you have like $5,000 of other debts? Do you have $30,000? What do you have? Try to get those settled at some kind of a discount. Oftentimes creditors are very happy to work with you and give you some kind of a deal to get those things resolved. And then beyond that, right, then you can really get your start getting your like foundation back in place. You can get your legal foundation in place. If you need some kind of legal help, if you have other lawsuits that are outstanding, you want to get those wrapped up, you can make an emergency fund, so you can start saving money, put money away for a rainy day. Make sure you get at least $1,000 of savings. And then once you get that done, once you have that savings done, then you can start looking at the credit score. Try to get your credit score up to 800. Right now it's probably in like the 500s. So just kind of think about as milestones, right? Get up to like 600, then 700, 750, get up to 800. And it's largely about making those payments on time. It looks like maybe I have someone calling in. 1 second. Greg, let me see if I can get this sorted out.
Got it.
All right, looks like we have William. William, are you hearing us okay? William, we aren't hearing you yet.
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, now we're hearing you. Yep, how's it going?
It's going well. Give me just 1 second. Looks like I have kind of a weird connection, but let me see if I can get close to the Wi-Fi here.
Fantastic. Yeah, we're hearing you pretty good. You're on live with me and Greg.
Okay.
Greg.
Looks like yep. I'm coming. Okay.
Fantastic. William, what's up? Tell us about your situation. What are you going through?
Well, my question for you guys is, I have been recently receiving some correspondence from, debt lawyers that I am in the process of being sued by American Express. I have gone to the portal that you normally use to verify information. I did verify that there is a lawsuit in the works. I think they filed it back in June or something like that, but I haven't been served just yet. So my question for you guys is there a process to kind of circumvent having to have, the inconvenience of being served, or have somebody knock at your door, to just kind of skip that step and start answering the actual lawsuit, or get a copy of the summons somehow without having to be served beforehand?
William, yeah, great. Happy to help you out with this. Tell us a little bit more about your situation generally. Like, how'd you get into the spot? What's the debt from? Is it a credit card debt, or what led to
Correct. Yeah, credit card debt. Just basically, basically some credit card debt that I had with a business that failed. And unfortunately, I lost the business and just have this debt of maybe about $8,000 more or less between a couple of cards that I had with American Express.
Sorry to hear it. Sorry to hear.
So basically,
what was the business? What was it doing?
It was a digital marketing company that I ran with a business partner of mine. But basically, my business partner unfortunately had some complications with family, and so we ended up having to move, and we decided just to does the business dissolve itself basically. So we were left with all the debt that was on the credit cards, and basically we weren't able to pay that, and I basically moved on from the business and got into a job now that I'm working with afterwards. But obviously there was still all this debt that was on these credit cards that was left from when the business dissolved last year.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you can get out of this position for sure, and happy to give you the tips to do so. Did you do a bankruptcy with the business? How did you shut it down?
Basically we basically he was the one that was primarily in the business. I was kind of the secondary partner in it. So he's the one that kind of handled all the dissolution of the business or dissolving the business. And I kind of let him handle that aspect of that. But I mean, apparently, as far as it came to the debt, I mean, I was still basically under my information, my social security number. It was more like an LLC, I guess, in a sense. So my information was still with the credit card. So basically, I'm still obviously on the hook for the debt that was accrued with my cards.
Yeah.
During that
Did you
time.
guys have an LLC formed?
Yes, we had an LLC. That's correct. Yes.
Okay, great. That's good. Glad that you weren't a sole proprietorship, so that puts you in a better position that you had the LLC formed. And then, I mean, do you know? It sounds like maybe your partner just kind of let things dissolve on their own without like declaring an official bankruptcy.
That's
right?
that's what it seems like is happening. Yeah, he didn't really go through the steps of bankrupting or anything like that. I think he just basically let the business dissolve, and I don't know exactly what paperwork he's really filed officially. He said that the business is dissolved and the franchise in Texas has already been canceled or hasn't been renewed. But as far as the actual steps, he hasn't really shown me any paperwork showing where the business has been dissolved through
Okay.
litigation or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure exactly where the step of that
Okay,
is.
and so the term here is that you are a personal guarantor. So on most corporate credit cards or corporate loans, especially for smaller businesses, the founder, like the owner, will become a
Mhm.
personal guarantor. And so in addition to like your LLC in Texas being on the hook for the loan, you and your partner are most likely on the hook for the loan. So that's like a pretty common situation, pretty much unavoidable in the early days of a company. Greg, what do you think here? What's the path to resolution, do you think, for
Yeah,
William?
well, first let me go back. I mean, his question was, I found out about this lawsuit. What can I avoid getting served because I haven't gotten served yet? And the answer to that is absolutely. And this is really common in commercial litigation because usually in commercial litigation, like there's a lot of conversations leading up to a lawsuit. What's going to happen, and so you just ask them to accept service, or you talk to their lawyer, and their lawyer just accepts service and things. I mean, basically, what you can do is you can just go ahead and file your answer, and acceptance of service is going to be presumed in that case. So that's like if you're ready to go and you're just like, let's just move this thing forward, like go ahead and file your answer. You're obviously not obligated to do that until you are served. However, the other danger that I see, if once you find out about a lawsuit, I think you're better off just answering anyway, even if they haven't served you, because what may happen is, okay, you learn about this and you're like, well, they haven't served me yet, so I don't have to file an answer. Well, what if they say they served you and they didn't? And now they have a default judgment. Now the burden is on you to kind of get that undone. So if you know about the lawsuit, you're ready to engage with it, ready to attack, negotiate, whatever you want to do. Like, I would just go ahead and file your answer right away. That's what I would do with that. Now,
Yeah.
as far as the questions about, like, George is talking about, oh, you're the personal guarantor. I don't know, sort of, and it sounds like you maybe don't know either, like sort of the status of this business. but the business still theoretically could be on the hook for this debt as well. And one strategy for resolution might be talking to your business partner, finding out, is there any money in the bank account, or I don't know, it depends on what kind of agreement you had with your business partner. There may be an opportunity to, and I don't know your relationship with him, if it's good or bad or whatever, but there might be an opportunity to bring him into that too. Even though you're the personal guarantor, that's not necessarily going to get you all the way off the hook, or mean there won't be a judgment against you, but there could be, offsetting stuff, or getting him involved some way that doesn't put all of the burden on you. But that's something that you're going to have to, fight out as part of the lawsuit process.
Right. William, last thing I'd say here, William, is
as far as getting a copy of the summons, to be able to get the answer sheet, or how would I be able to get a copy of it if I'm not served? Can I go to the court and get a copy of this, or what other options do I have aside from being served? Because obviously that's the document I would need to answer through Solo.
Yeah, exactly. So what's happened is the debt collector, whoever, has filed the complaint in the court. And usually when something gets filed with the court, like a report goes out to people that have signed up to receive those kind of updates. And then defense lawyers, they get those and they send out advertisements to people that have been sued to try and get their business. And that's most likely what has happened to you. So what you do is you can go to the court and just give them your name, and they should be able to give you a copy of what's been filed.
Okay.
Yep, that's okay. Right. Yep, you can call them on the phone. We also have a great link. Hannah can send it to you. Hannah is our great person helping out on the hotline. She can send you the link to the list of online listings of cases in Texas as well. So you can go ahead and try to search like your business name, your last name in the online listing. And if that doesn't work, you can call into the court. The last thing I'd say here, William, is just that, real wealth is in ownership. So with Solo, we want to help you get this thing figured out now. Also, you can continue using Solo and our, chatting with our AI to continue to build wealth over time. And I hope that you get back into the game as well. Hopefully this doesn't put you in too bad of a spot. We want to help you continue. And like, wealth is in ownership, right? Whether it's like you own a law firm, whether you own a marketing company, whether you own stocks that are traded in the stock market, whether you get stock options at the company that you work for, whatever, that's where the wealth really is. So you want to keep on doing that. All right, William, thank you so much for jumping on the call. Next up, we have Scott. Let me go ahead and add in Scott here.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. My apologies, I joined 10 minutes late, so you may have already answered this. But I've gotten several letters from debt collection agencies, trying to settle a debt that I had with a couple of credit cards. So I've seen online sometimes. So how should I initially, I haven't been sued or any of that, how should I initially respond? So a lot of things that I'm reading about is, should I send a request for debt validation under the Fair Debt Collection Practice agencies, asking them to provide me with the amount of debt, a detailed breakdown of the fees, interest, name and originator, and making sure that they actually now own the contract or agreement that bears my signature, or any other proof that they actually own it. So I just need to know the first step. Is that a valid response to when I get one of these things for the first time?
Yeah, Scott, zooming out a little bit, tell us a little bit more about this debt. What's the source of it? How'd you get into this position?
So I was in the situation where working for a firm, and a partner took 7 figures from me, and he's in prison now. But that really doesn't help me right now, in the fact that I have some obviously financial issues after all this money was taken for me. And so I'm digging myself back out of this hole. So there have been some credit cards that I was not able to keep up with. And so, the credit cards sold them off for pennies on the dollar, obviously, to some of these agencies. And now I'm starting to get some of these letters. So that's how I want to, be above board and um, make sure that they actually can verify, and that if they don't have the paperwork, do I really need to pay? And, um, you know, so
Right.
that's my question.
So you're saying, sorry, you said that you had a partner that you were working with, and he stole money from you. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
Or he made you?
a million five.
He stole $1.5 million from you. That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to
hence
hear it.
hence the letters.
Are you going after him for that kind of money? Like, what's
Uh,
the situation here? Is this like bank fraud, or just
it's
didn't come
an
through on his part of the bargain?
investment. Yeah, some of all of that. So I'm so far behind in the debt collection. So he also embezzled client money. So there are multiple lawsuits on that. So I'm way at the end of that. So, and the fact that the firm is now bankrupt and he's in prison, very little hope for you know that money for me.
Wow, sounds like a wild ride. Sorry you have had to go through this.
Yeah, me too.
Partners in
Appreciate it.
prison.
Yeah,
Was this like a law firm or marketing firm kind of thing?
investment firm.
Investment firm. I see. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Well, yeah. So Greg was thinking here, right? Yeah. So certainly. Well, Greg, go ahead. Yeah, I think me
Yeah,
and Greg
well,
might have a little bit of a different take on this, but yeah, go ahead, Greg.
yeah. So first thing I would say is this wasn't really your question, but based on what you said, I've helped people before who have had money embezzled out of their company. And what we typically do is we engage with the criminal process and try and, get the prosecutor and the judge to include with their ruling a restitution order. Now, so that they're ordered to pay back. I mean, I get where you're at though. Like someone that's in jail and has squandered all that money
Yeah,
doesn't get money, right? The other thing that I would do is file your own lawsuit, and get the judgment. The thing about judgments is they can last a really long time. This isn't going to solve your problem immediately, but I mean, judgments can last decades and can be renewed depending on the state you're in, and you just never know. Like he gets out and starts making money, you can start getting a little of it back. That's, I guess, another thing that I thought of while listening to you. But to answer your question, it's okay. So you're getting all these collection letters now. What's an appropriate response to that? And I think what you want to do is remember, first of all, legally, you're not obligated to do anything until they actually sue you.
okay.
But I think a good response is usually to send like a debt validation or debt verification letter. Now, I think you mentioned some specific things that you want to know from them. You can put those into your letter and request them. Understand that the law is not exactly clear on what debt validation or debt verification is. So you may get answers to your specific questions, but you may not.
Okay.
They may give you some of the information. They may not have all the information that you're asking for, which frankly is probably a good thing for you if that's the case. So a lot of times people will send that and all they get back is like a ledger or like a single page statement. If it's like a credit card, it'll be like a single page statement that just says past due balance. And so then they're like, well, they haven't really verified anything. And, the law is not exactly clear on whether that's valid verification or not. So then if you look at that and you say, look, I don't really think they have the information that they're
Yeah.
required to have, then what you want to do is, just do nothing, wait and see if they sue you. If they do sue you, then as part of that lawsuit process, you can make much more specific requests for
Okay.
information. These are called interrogatories and requests for production of documents. And then you can ask them for specific documents. You can ask them specific questions, but that's not something they're required to answer until they've filed the lawsuit against you. So what I've done when I've had people send these kinds of letters is first thing I do, I send a debt verification letter. I wait and see back what I get. If I'm looking at this going, it's pretty clear this is my debt, then I either pay it if I can, or I engage in settlement negotiations. If I look at it and I say, I don't think this is good enough, I'm going to wait for them to sue me, ask for more specific information in the lawsuit. If they don't have it, then I think I got a pretty good shot at beating them in court.
Yeah, so that's super helpful. So I know, they're not just buying my debt, they're probably buying thousands, at a time. So
Yeah.
what, and so they buy, my debt for pennies on the dollar. And let's say that that used to be my credit card, but, they don't have the actual, verification that they own the debt outright because they're missing all this paperwork, even though it's really my debt, am I legally, required to pay that debt or work something out with them if they don't actually have the required documents?
Yeah, so they've got to prove if they're like a third-party debt buyer or a junk debt buyer.
Yes, that's it. That's right.
They've got to prove two things. They've got to prove, number one, that you owed the original debt, but they've also got to prove, number two, that they own it.
That's right.
So they might be able to prove the first point, but not the second point. I think that's kind of what you're getting at. And what they need to prove that is there's got to be some kind of purchase agreement. It might not be called a purchase agreement. It might be called something else, but it's got to show that your original creditor sold the debt to the third-party debt buyer. And what I see a lot is that they will just purchase a whole bunch and it's not specifically listed out. So if you're going to defend this, what you're specifically looking for is some kind of agreement that shows that your specific debt was purchased. So is your name on it? Is your account number on it? And if not, then your argument's going to be, I don't think that they've purchased my debt.
Yeah. So I think I might have even gotten this from Solo's website, but on this template letter, under the Fair Debt Collection Practices, the last two paragraphs was like, please be advised that until you provide the information requesting, I'm exercising my right to request that you cease all collection activities related to this account. If you are unable to provide the requested documentation, I request that you stop all collection efforts and cease reporting this account to any credit bureaus. Now, I don't know if that's enforceable or anything, or this language.
Scott, I want to jump in with a couple kind of broader questions. Right, so we determined this is from, kind of stemming from an embezzlement situation from your partner, which is very unfortunate. What kind of debt are we talking about here? Like, what kind of amount are we talking about that people are coming after you for? Is it like credit card debt or a business
Yeah,
loan?
it's probably 3 cards, maybe 20, 25. But I used to have an 805 credit score, and so
Right.
this really took me into a tailspin, and
Right. And these are credit cards that you were a personal guarantor on? You're the personal guarantor on them?
yes, they
And
were
they're business cards, right? They're cards for the business, not for you personally?
no, they were personal cards.
Okay, personal
Yeah,
cards.
I
Okay.
wish
Right.
I wish they were business cards. I could have just
Right.
let him have it all.
Right. And so you basically you put expenses related to this whole criminal situation onto these cards, right?
Not
This criminal
necessarily.
lawsuit.
They're mostly personal expenses, not related to business. Because any business expenses, I had a business card.
Right. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of sounds like the debt's like stemming from this tumultuous time with your business.
Well, it's stemming from the fact that that I lost so much money, and then quit the firm with my very high salary and bonus structure.
Right. Okay. Right. So Solo's stance on this, right? So what we found is that oftentimes just moving towards settlement on debts that are owed is usually the best path. So if somebody comes to us and they say, I recognize this debt, I'm familiar with it, then what we educate people on is that usually just trying to get some kind of a settlement on the debt is going to be the best path. And what we find for people who aren't represented by a lawyer is that just moving towards settlement will be the best option. So If they're being
Okay.
sued, file a response. If they're not being sued, then just moving towards making an offer through Solo Settle to the collector. So, easiest way to connect with the collector is just on our Solo Settle platform and work with
Yeah, I've looked
hundreds of
at it. Yeah.
collectors. Yep. And so usually just making an offer, skipping like a debt verification or debt validation step is usually the best path. Mainly because it usually has kind of like unexpected consequences for just a consumer going at it themselves, where
Yeah. Yeah.
they'll file like a debt validation letter with the collector, and then the collector puts the account on hold. So then if like the consumer calls in, the collector won't answer them, like they won't talk to them on the phone, and the consumer gets real upset about it. Like, why doesn't the collector ever talk to me? And it's because the consumer filed a debt validation letter. So usually that kind of path works better for people who like have an attorney. If you're
Got
just if somebody comes to us and they're saying like, hey, I owe this debt, usually the best path is just going to be to try to get it settled, and then just try to get a discount on it. Just try to
Yeah.
get a discount. Oftentimes, debts that are pre-lawsuit, you can get a settlement of like 50% of the balance. If it's in a lawsuit, maybe it's like 70 to 80%,
So,
and then just try to move on from there.
yeah, unfortunately, I missed the first 10. I came in and I heard you guys talk about this, Greg talking about this. So obviously, they send out a letter like, hey, if you can pay 90% of this, we'll do. So how many reiterations of this do I need to go through before, I get to 50%? Or, obviously the other option is just to let you guys handle it.
A lot of theories there. A lot of theories. One is, to go back and forth and get into this like positional based bargaining. With Solo Settle, what we're trying to do is we maintain good relationships with collectors as well as we maintain trust of consumers. So we try to give people give the parties the information that's needed just to get to an ideal settlement as fast as possible. So I think really it's just about like helping the collector understand your ability or inability to pay the debt and then get a settlement at that rate.
So,
Scott,
so
thanks for calling in. We've got to hop on with the next person. Thanks so
okay,
much for
thanks so
calling in.
much, guys. I really appreciate the feedback.
Thanks.
Appreciate
Good
it.
luck.
Okay, folks. We've been saving something special for the end of our show. We are announcing the winner of our giveaway. Before we get into that, Greg, I believe you need to hop off. So thanks so much for coming on to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. Look forward to it again next time.
Appreciate it. Everyone, if you want to, support Greg, a great way to do that is to click on the link in our chat on the show, and you can use that link to respond to your lawsuit. Take care, Greg. Alrighty, folks. So $4,700 is the average amount Solo users owe in debt. So in July, we wanted to celebrate financial freedom by hosting another giveaway to help someone pay off $4,700 towards their debt. And congrats to Sean for being selected as a winner of the giveaway. Sean, here you are live. How's it going?
Good. Good, George. How are you? Thank you.
Doing great. Thanks so much for coming on to the debt hotline. Very glad to have you on.
Thank you.
So, folks, Sean is joining us tonight to share his story and a few words about winning the giveaway. Sean, what went through your mind when you were notified that you won the giveaway?
My first reaction was, no, it's not real. I thought it was a scam. And I Googled Solo, I Googled you, went on to LinkedIn, and realized, no, it wasn't, it's not a scam. It wasn't a mistake. And so from there, then it was just kind of a sigh of relief to think that I'd actually won this giveaway, and that maybe it might give me a little peace of mind, make things a little bit more manageable.
Fantastic. Sean, that's great. Glad to hear. Miracles do happen. You do win from time to time. Free money. So here we are. We're giving you money to help you get back on the right track. The last time I won something, I think was for free. I think I won a Beanie Baby in like the 4th grade as a potato chip Beanie Baby. I don't know if I've won anything since, at least in a giveaway sense. Maybe I should have kept that giveaway. I think I gave it away to someone in my class. Maybe I think if it was a Beanie Baby, maybe I should have kept it.
That's a good investment.
Right, could have been a great investment, indeed. Okay, Sean. So tell us about your current debt situation, right, and how much this $4,700 will help.
So I just it last week, in fact, turned 57, and I had a
Congrats.
career. Thank you. I had a career. I had a career in marketing, and a couple years ago, I got laid off, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. And it's been harder than I thought it was going to be to find work again. And you and I had even spoken about like AI and how that's impacting things, and I don't even know or am aware of how it might be impacting things in my area and with my job search. But I do know that I feel the ageism. If I was an employer, a 57-year-old versus a 27-year-old, is not a difficult decision to make unless I was just the most highly qualified person in the state. And so, yeah, just it gets to be this huge juggling act, right? You've got all the bills that you need to pay, and then you're trying to think about savings, you're trying to think about retirement, and you're also trying to think about this credit card debt. And mine's over 6,000, like 6,200 now. So yeah, that 4,700 is going to come in handy.
You have about $6,200 in debt, and we're solo sending you 4,700, so that's going to wipe out most of it.
Yeah.
That's great. What's your plan for tackling the rest of it?
Well, the first thing is, just put it towards the credit card first thing, and not think about it. I think it's really easy too to be like, "Ooh, I'll scratch a little bit off of that and then only pay this much." But the 4,700 is going to go directly to the credit card.
Do you have multiple cards or just one?
I'm probably one of the lucky ones that just has the one.
What kind of card is it?
It's a Visa.
Like a Visa.
Like a bank issued Visa.
Like a Chase Bank or something like that, or Citibank?
It's through Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo?
Yeah.
And is it, I guess, are you delinquent on the payments at this point, or just like a couple months behind, or have you been making payments?
Yeah, I just, it's getting the minimum payment across the board, but other people probably see this as well. It's like the interest just starts to build, and then that it becomes an additional bill. You're paying the gas and power and your rent, and it's like, oh, and then interest on that becomes like my third bill.
Right.
Which,
right.
It's frustrating.
Yeah. So solo people settle a lot of debts with collectors. They resolve a lot of debts with people through solo settle. You can make usually solo settle is usually working with people more in like the lawsuit or like the pre-lawsuit stage, at least in collections. But you can certainly hop on and make an offer to Wells Fargo to wrap up this debt for the $4,700, right? I think if I were in your position, I would be thinking, okay, I have $6,200 in debt. I have $4,700 available right now. The bank would probably appreciate it if I could just pay $4,700 as a lump sum all at once to pay off the full balance.
Yeah.
Let's see if they will accept that for the full amount. So you can make an offer through Solo Settle to do that. You can also, you're welcome just to call the bank directly and try to work with somebody to see if they'll accept that payment for the full amount. But then, once you make this payment, you really want to be able to act fast to either get some more income, which I know is difficult, but get some more income to try to pay off the remaining 1,500.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I think after the show, I can have Hannah connect you with our jobs network. So Solo is backed by Y Combinator, which is a great investor, and we're a network of a lot of startups that hire folks with your kind of experience in marketing. So happy to connect you there and see if that can help.
Thanks,
But
sir.
if anybody, if anyone's listening and they're looking for a marketer, Sean's your man. So connect with them. And let's see. So you're going to be putting the $4,700 to the balance. Yes. What would you tell someone else who's in the same boat you were in before winning the giveaway?
I just know I would oftentimes, I didn't anticipate kind of being in this position. I don't think anybody does. But it's really easy to get overwhelmed and kind of freeze up, or at least that's what I do in that situation. And you're staring at the bills and the balances of what you do. For me, the best strategy sometimes is just to walk away from it all and take a break and breathe and come back to it, and just not to give up. Because it's frustrating. And so us, thanks to you and Solo, obviously, because it's kind of two gifts for me. Like I do get that 4,700, but not, I think most of us, or I'll speak for me, go through that balance sheet of what can I cut with, $7.99 subscription here, or what, whatever it is. And then the question of, and then what? And just from discussions with you guys have been great, and kind of just being able to see what other tools and resources are out there. So, I mean, it sounds really, really cliche, right? But if I can discover and look at these tools and talk and be able to have those resources, then I don't see why anybody else could.
That's fantastic. What kind of marketing did you do in the past? Like what kind of companies were you working for?
My full career was Wells Fargo.
You were working for Wells Fargo.
I actually worked for Wells Fargo.
That's a terrible irony.
I know. So based on what you said before, hopefully that's a viable option for them, especially being a former employee.
Were you doing consumer marketing for Wells Fargo or business to business?
No, it was customer marketing. So mostly acquisition and retention marketing to current customers, to utilize online services. So to bank online, pay their bills online, all those types of activities that a lot of us take for granted now. But
right.
When I was first marketing these things, they were new and they were something customers wanted. So that was kind of a fun job.
Okay. Well, certainly fintech's a booming industry as well as banking, right? Banks are becoming more and more powerful, and fintech is certainly growing. So I'm sure you can get back on your feet and find a great spot, right? You have 15 to 20 years left of your career, and certainly the best part of your career can still be ahead of you, Sean. Thanks so much for coming on. Glad you are the winner, and glad we're helping you out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. No, I was happy to be here. I can't thank you guys enough.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Alrighty, folks. Thanks so much for tuning into the Debt Hotline. Again, my name is George. I'm founder of Solo. Thanks so much for showing up. And stay tuned for our next giveaway. We will be starting another one soon. So just keep paying attention and watching to see when we start. Just a couple more tips for folks watching. So if you have been sued for a debt, you can go to solosuit.com. Just click reply to a debt lawsuit to get started on the response. Or you can click settle a debt if you haven't been sued yet or if you've already responded. Also, you can click this great Ask Solo button, which I love, and you can have a chat with Solo AI to figure out what you need to do next. You can come in here and say, like, how can I build my credit? All right, and this is based on ChatGPT-4, which is really the award-winning AI that has passed the bar exam as well as the CPA exam. And it'll give you tips tailored to you. You can also plug in your credit report in your finances to get tips tailored specifically to your situation. All right, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, take care.